Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Lucia Uribe, and I am the director of Arigato International Geneva. In this presentation, I will talk about safe environments for children and youth from a protection to a development perspective. This presentation will address the importance of safe environments for children, not only from a protection point of view, but from a development stand, and will emphasize that by creating a safe environment for children that considers not only their physical and emotional needs, but also the environment they live and cognitive and spiritual needs, children are empowered and equipped to develop themselves fully and in relation to others. When we talk about children and young people, there is a central element that should frame all our discussions, interventions, and reflections: human dignity. Human dignity is an umbrella concept for the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It is also a core element in many religious communities and a central component for the development of justice and peace. If we want to provide a safe environment for children and young people and want to empower them as agents of change, we need to look more holistically at the topic and from a more integrated perspective. If we think of human dignity, very often we think of human life as sacred. We think about the fulfillment of basic necessities. Not very often we look at human dignity as the capacity to choose and make decisions freely, to develop our identity freely. These two components are extremely important. Isn't it important for our children to be able to make decisions by themselves, to think critically about the situations that they face, to be able to relate to others fully, to be able to develop themselves in the way they want to be? Isn't it important to look at the concept of human dignity not only as a basic necessity and the fulfillment of those basic necessities, but also the fulfillment of our own personality, of our capacity to choose and decide freely and to develop who we are and who we want to be? Now, let us look at the word safety. The dictionary describes safety as the condition of being protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury. When we look at the word safe, it means protected from or not exposed to danger or risk, not likely to be harmed or lost. Safety, in these terms, places children into an object perspective and dynamic. We need to protect children, we may think. But what does it mean? How do we create a safe environment that allows them to develop freely and fully? Every child and young person have the right to a safe environment. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child states that the child must have the opportunity of growing up and developing in an environment that is as healthy and safe as possible, and that the child's parents should be provided information on, for example, injury prevention. When we talk about creating a safe environment, we mostly hear protection of children against physical harm, direct violence, abuse, and exploitation. It encompasses, in many cases, though not often, the emotional protection of children. Article 2 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child talks about importance of creating safe and protective channels for participation and self-expression. Safety and protection also encompasses environmental protection, though most of the times it fails to address safety of children from a development perspective. How do we ensure that children are and feel safe to develop their talents, to develop their identities, to participate, to relate to others, to transform the world? We need to address safety at physical, emotional, environmental, cognitive, and spiritual levels. A safe environment for children encompasses all these levels. Look at them from a development perspective. Protection and development sometimes seems compartmentalized. To understand what it means to consider safety from a development perspective, it is important to understand different types of violence: direct, structural, and cultural. These three types of violence have been discussed by Johan Galtung, who is considered the founder of peace studies. Most of the times, safety is understood from the direct violence point of view: physical and verbal mal and mistreatment and abuse. However, if there are inequalities, injustices, if children cannot access social services, if they are discriminated against, they are not safe to develop their full potential and their human dignity is violated. There is another type of violence that is even more important when it comes to the safe development of children, and it is cultural violence. Are children manipulated to speak or express their views, or even not allowed to express their opinions? Are children indoctrinated about particular views or beliefs and not allowed to critically think about their own lives? Are children not provided opportunities to explore diversity, different views, and conditioned to accept the status quo? How can children grow safely if they are not encouraged to thrive and fully develop their capacities? Let us now briefly look at the threats to the safe development of children. Let us start with the physical safety, which can be threatened by child labor, sexual exploitation, and abuse that often happens in circles of trust, the family, religious communities. Child trafficking, the recruitment of children as soldiers, corporal punishment, child marriage. And let us look at a few statistics. Almost 50 million primary and lower secondary age children are out of school. The proportion of out-of-school children in conflict-affected countries has increased from 42% of the global total in 2008 to 50% in 2011. Schools should be safe spaces for children, but if children do not have access to school, they are likely not to be protected. There are estimated to be 250,000 child soldiers in the world. 40% of child soldiers are girls. 14 million girls under the age of 18 are forced to marry every year. And UNICEF estimates that around 150 million children aged 5 to 14 in developing countries are involved in child labor. This is 16% of all children of the world in this age group. About 29,000 children under the age of 5, 21 each minute die every day, mainly from preventable causes. And here we enter into the aspect of negligence. We see that the physical safety of children is violated very often. Its protection is a condition to ensure that children can develop further and that they can thrive even under adversary structural socioeconomic situations. Now, when we look at the emotional safety of children, it can be threatened in many forms. Verbal abuse, humiliating children, intimidating them, creating vertical relations that create gaps between children and youth, between children, youth and adults, creating hierarchies. The manipulation of children to marry, to work, to join illegal armed groups, but also to believe what we want them to believe, to avoid that they make their own thoughts and opinions. The isolation of children, the separation from friends, the separation from different groups of people. Discrimination based on status, beliefs, expressed opinions, activities, even sexual orientation. The environment where children grow should be an environment that protects children, that is safe, but also that allows them to develop. The environment where children grow can be threatened by the lack of proper construction of school, the unavailability of washing facilities, the attacks on schools, natural disasters, environmental hazards. Poverty is clearly a threat on safety of children, which is rarely addressed in child programming, though it is highly included in development programs. What causes poverty? Inequalities, injustices, corruption. How are those being considered when developing child and youth programs? How do they hamper children's participation and the possibility to live in a safe environment? How do injustices and corruption also influence the way children see the world or become part of the world? So the environment is critical in the development of children. So when we are addressing our programs and develop our programs for children, it's important also to consider how holistically we can address not only the classroom, but what happens around it. When it comes to the cognitive safety of children, what do we mean by cognitive? The capacity of children to acquire knowledge, but also to develop skills and capacities, and most importantly, to be able to understand and comprehend concepts and situations. How do we create the possibility for critical thinking? How do we allow children to learn to make decisions? How do we allow a safe space for children to be creative, to develop problem solving skills, and apply those in their environment? How do we avoid indoctrinating our children into particular opinions and beliefs without allowing them the space to understand and critically think about those? Is this a safe learning environment? The cognitive development of children can be threatened by malnutrition. If children are not nourished properly, their brains cannot develop, and therefore their capacity to concentrate and to learn is diminished. If schools don't have enough materials, resources, creativity to stimulate the learning of children, the spaces for them to develop fully, to learn from different perspectives, is also diminished. Lastly, let us look at the spiritual safety of children, often threatened by the lack of spaces for silence and reflection. In our educational systems, we focus a lot on repetition, on memorizing, on evaluating children, and we often neglect the importance of silence and reflection, of connecting to oneself and to others, allowing the opportunities just to be there, to be in silence with one another. The spiritual safety is also threatened by the lack of opportunities for children to practice their own religion. We're afraid of letting children to practice their own religion because we believe or we think that it might affect the other. But allowing the children to practice their own religion can create an atmosphere of respect, an atmosphere of learning from one another. And this is also important for the spiritual growth of children. Spiritual safety is also threatened by the lack of spaces for possibilities. More often than not, we tend to kill children's innate spirituality by punishing them, by boxing them in the way we want them to be, by forcing them to the immediate rather than to the ultimate. It is important to embrace questions. When children ask questions, we think that as educators we need to have all answers. We need to embrace the questions and ask why, and why not, and why. And, throw the questions to them. Why do you think? What would be your answer? And that's important. The possibility to wonder, to be amazed by the world. Very often in schools we do not prioritize the arts, nature, sports, games, possibility to enjoy in a fun environment. We do not encourage a time for dialogue, to enter in reflection with one another. And most importantly, we lack role models. We as educators have a very important role to be a model for our children and youth. How are we promoting a culture in the school of practicing values, that children see how we practice those values and in a way they can follow our example. The Learning to Live Together program of Arigato International aims to develop safe learning environments for children, not only from a protection point of view, but from a development point of view, as discussed before. Therefore, it is important for us as facilitators to look at all these dynamics, all these components when we are preparing our Learning to Live Together programs with children. In the implementation, we need to look at the environment where children are learning. We need to look at how we are promoting those spaces for them to think critically. We need to know how the environment, the external factors also affect the children in the classroom, in the settings where they are learning. It is important to understand how we are creating all these spaces for them and how we are providing the opportunities for children to develop physically, emotionally, cognitively, and spiritually, and how the environment is also safe for them to learn and to engage with one another. The methodologies of learning to live together are conducive for creating a safe learning environment. They allow children to take control of their own learning. It provides spaces for dialogue that can encourage the development of trust within the group. It provides spaces for dialogue for children to develop themselves. It promotes encouragement of children and allows them to get to know themselves in relation to others. Those methodologies are based on cooperation and collaboration, on reflection, on developing metacognitive skills. It provides spaces for children to go on a self-journey, for them to develop critical thinking, to go through ethical dilemmas, for them to solve problems in relation to others. It creates opportunities for children to appreciate diversity, to respect other beliefs, and provides opportunities for transformation, to move from reflection to action. You're all familiar with the learning process of the Learning to Live Together program. It has 6 stages: motivation, exploration, dialogue, discovery, reflection, and action. This learning process accompanied by the creation of safe learning environments and all the educational approach of the Learning to Live Together allows us to develop in children their sense of being, of belonging, of connecting with others, of becoming who they want to become, and to help transforming their societies. This is the sense of the Learning to Live Together. Allow all these possibilities for children and young people to become, to transform, to connect, to belong, to be. So, what does it mean to be, to belong, to connect, to become, and to transform? When we talk about being, we refer to the possibility for children to reflect about their own values, what they are, what they stand for, to express themselves freely. Being children, but also full participants in society, to have possibilities to be part of the decisions, to make their voices heard. In our learning environments, we should strive to provide those spaces for children, for them to take control of their own learning, to help us to make decisions in the classroom, to decide what they want to learn, to make their voices heard. When it comes to belonging, it's allowing the spaces for children and youth to discover where they belong to, their roots in relation to their experiences and others. It's extremely important that children feel proud of who they are in their society, about their roots, about their parents, about the family they have grown. It's important to create those spaces in our Learning to Live Together programs. When it comes to connecting, it refers to building bridges of trust with others, moving from fear to genuine collaboration, breaking walls, and learning. The possibility for them to get into dialogue, to talk to one another, to discuss, to challenge their perspectives, to connect. When it comes to becoming, it's important that children and youth become role models for others, for them to inspire other children, to facilitate learning experiences for others, to lead by example, for them to reflect on their own experiences, on their own values, on who they are, and the role they also have in society, for them to become who they want to be, to think about their own aspirations, to think about their own ideas, their own beliefs, who they want to be in the future, becoming. But also transforming. Children and youth are empowered to transform their societies, to raise awareness, to mobilize other youth, to fight against poverty, violence, for them to become agents of change, to transform. And this is extremely important. Our program moves from reflection to action and goes back to reflection. It's through interaction, it's through the transformation of society that children develop themselves. And this is the sense of the Learning to Live Together program. I want to finish this presentation with a poem from Khalil Gibran, the prophet, in the chapter called Children. This poem, in a way, summarizes very well what we have been discussing in this presentation about the creation of safe learning environments for children that allow them to develop fully. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward nor tarries with yesterday. Thank you.